Okay,
Kiega.
so I'm gonna start music in 3, 2, 1.
High on a hill was a lonely goat.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Progression Gamers. Oh shit! God damn it!
No, that's fine. It's fine.
That's how we do it live.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Facroll Faction podcast. I am Irving, aka Moonbear, and joining me today are Kent, the Filthy Casual Blacker, and J Kyle 37, usually just J Kyle 37. And today we are going to talk about MOBAs, that is multiplayer online battle arenas, i.e. League of Legends.
Yes, League of Legends is a big one. Dota, Smite, Heroes of New Earth, Heroes of the Storm. So many of them.
So many things.
Yeah.
And so without further ado, we all did a little bit of research this week, mostly together, playing these various games, or at least a few of them. We played 3 of them together, and then part of the group played the 4th.
Yes, Irv and I did a
Talk
League
about
of
today,
Legends
so-
match together.
I mean, that's what it is. I guess we'll start off with the highlight of the evening, which was Dota 2.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, that was the highlight for you, huh, Irv?
Oh yeah, it was absolutely fantastic.
It was definitely the most memorable. I'll say that.
I think it was also the most profanity filled from my end.
I don't know. You get kind of you were very annoyed during Dota 2, but I think because you like League of Legends a little bit more, you tend to get very upset because you're more passionate about that game.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll yell at you.
Yes,
I'll
and
yell.
you did, as a matter of fact. I
I
remember
did
that.
like twice.
Yeah.
Um,
there was a
no.
thing I did that I kind of deserved it, but
So
Dota.
2, the reason that we played Dota was because, well, I was the one that instigated the Dota. It was Dota original. Dota 1 was the original MOBA. Actually, no, before Dota was Warcraft 3.
Yes.
That was there was a mod that was Dota, and that was where they all came from. So I thought, hey, let's play Dota 2. That's kind of like the original whatever. So we played through some of that. And Kyle, how did you like Dota?
I played as a support character. I played as Crystal Maiden, and I was expecting a meta sort of similar to League of Legends or Heroes of the Storm, where you have certain champions go in certain areas. Well, Dota has quite a few very quality supports in their game as far as their heroes go. And so I expected to be with a partner in my lane, and I would do my very best, like no one ever was, and, help out my teammate. Well, I ended up being alone versus 2 assassins. And while I was kind of surprised at how much damage these supports really did in Dota 2, I was very pleasantly surprised, I guess, because it was pretty fun, especially with me being solo lane. But I just
the
died
thing
a
about
lot.
supports in Dota and League 2, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but is that there's very few actual heals. It's more just like giving maybe like a buff here, or maybe
League
a
is
small
about,
shield.
I'd say 33% heals, 33% shields, and then 33% like support. Is kind
And
of how I divide that.
it's all about how you build your character, what items you buy and things.
Well, in League, there's not very many supports you can build actually like damage. You can probably count on one hand the ones that are like truly diverse like that. Most of them, they have a lot of utility, but they don't have the scaling which assassins do have.
Anyway, Irv, how did you like Dota?
I despise that game with every fiber of my being, and now I feel like it's an unfair hate to just give it, because I haven't played it to the max level cap or whatever it is, or as many hours as I put in League or Heroes of the Storm. But it's that system. I don't enjoy it. It's not. I think there's so many problems with it. I could go on forever, but my main issues is the out of match UI. I really dislike the shop, the interface. I don't like how it leads into the game. I don't think it's very conducive to natural like progression style of going through any sort of interface.
I will say, in contrast to that point, there have been many times that I've wished I'd been able to access the in-game UI in League of Legends in the menus. For example, changing your key binding, this is something that you cannot do without being inside of a game in League of Legends, and that is very frustrating. So
Yeah, that is frustrating. Also, the default keybinds in Heroes of the Storm are another thing I absolutely hated. Let me look at my keyboard if I can remember this. I had one spell that was bound to V, one that was to T, one to C. Like, it was just all over that general area, over that WASD block.
That did seem
And
a little odd, yeah.
It was not, like, it was just uncomfortable, and it was fine. Like, I could do this because I know my keyboard, but it was just horrendous. I'm used to having everything bound to my Naga as numbers.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you have to have a StarCraft 2 level of APM to play that game correctly.
A little bit. And
Almost.
Another thing, just continuing on the things I don't like the secret shop idea. I don't like the idea that certain items are only available at a certain location. And yes, they remedy that with their courier system, which is interesting. And
Not really.
Heroes of the Storm and Dota 2 both have that courier, which is a separate unit you can control and send out to go buy for you and deliver your stuff to you. It can be killed, but it's unique, and it does offer an interesting tier of mastery and control. But I also really freaking hate it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's enjoyable to use. I think it's just kind of annoying. And I have to go back if I want to buy something, or everything's in one consolidated place for the shop.
And
I don't.
There was no inherent back button. You had to buy an item from the shop to teleport back to
That
the base.
was annoying.
I mean, which isn't like game breaking. It's just more annoying.
I
Kyle
honestly
said.
think it's fine.
Yeah.
It's annoying, but oh well. If you got to run back, it makes it more punishing. The heroes are interesting in Dota. I do like some of their abilities. They're just pretty standard abilities. I don't like the graphical quality of it, to be honest. Out of the ones we played, I think it's the lowest.
Yeah.
And it's
Granted,
younger than League,
it
but
is-
League
it is
has definitely had a lot more work done to it.
I
just don't like Dota. I think it's at the lower end of all the games I played. I don't like it definitely has a very leaver intense culture. I can tell just from the few games I played. Like, people will leave and drop out, and then that makes
We
it so
did
you don't
have
get
a leaver,
scored
yeah.
for the entire game.
Well, to be fair, that's not counting your score when someone else leaves is a positive thing, because if you lose a bunch of games and all of those games you have a leaver, that's adversely affecting your
Yeah,
NR.
but it's not like the game is necessarily over quicker when someone leaves. That game still went
No,
on for
yeah.
an age. The
You know,
game was really long.
I gotta say, and to play devil's advocate here, because obviously it's clearly the second most popular MMO, second only to League of Legends, and not by a large margin either. They're very popular, as both games are. Now, the last 10 or 15 minutes of our Dota 2 game was a lot of fun. We had gotten several items by then. We had boots, so we were faster than a pixel per second.
Well, I wouldn't say fun per se. I would say faster.
Interesting,
Because
fascinating.
it took a little while for it to actually get going. Because the first 20 minutes were horrendously slow.
Yeah, it was
gameplay-wise.
awful. It was very miserable.
I don't know. You guys were in different lanes from me. I actually had a pretty interesting lane. It was a lot of back and forth and minor skirmishing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's just the game. It really didn't appeal to me. It lacked any sort of interest in it. I don't There was no inherent story in it that you find in something like Smite, which has gods from mythology, or Heroes of the Storm, which has these characters built from this strong backlog of lore.
Mm-hmm.
League even had a really decent amount of lore until they cut a lot of that.
Yeah.
From their,
They're we're
production.
going to redo all the lore. Eventually.
Eventually, yeah, but still, Dota had the least of any of that. It had the longest game by far. It had the least interesting game by far, and it just looked the worst.
All right,
Like,
negative
just-
points to Dota.
Good points though. It has a lot of skill involved, definitely. The controlling of the courier does appeal to that higher, I'm able to manage more things on my screen,
Mhm.
more stuff going on, and it has some counterplay to it, and you can play into it interestingly. It's hey, my enemy doesn't know I'm gonna get this item, and I can stay in lane and then pop. I have this big item, time to pew pew. So it's interesting. It's curious. it does have some good points. The skins look pretty cool. I I was kind of annoyed that like there are things there'll be things that range from $12 in price, I think I saw, to things that are like 6 to 5 cents, and it's
Yeah,
like,
which is kind of
what's the point of having a transaction of 5 cents? That's just aggravating.
Yeah.
Bundle that in with something else and just make it worth $1.50 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't charge me a pence for something that's ugh.
Yeah.
Exactly. Dota for me was fine near the end. It was slower. I mean, I might play a little bit more of it, but I don't know.
I will agree with Irv, where it's I would definitely say it's the highest skill cap out of all the games that we played. I could see with putting in a lot of effort and putting in a lot of time in that game, learning the nuances and the mechanics, that could definitely maybe bring a little bit more of enjoyment, but it's such a high hill to climb. It's just not interesting. I can sit down with a game of Heroes of the Storm and within minutes just be enveloped in skirmishes and objectives and gameplay and
Speaking of which,
annoyed me when I played a solo game of Dota by myself before I played with you guys. They have an in-game voice chat that just has really annoying. Like, I don't like the quality of it, but also I didn't know how to shut this guy up. I'd listen to some dude on my team talk, and it's like, all right, like, it's talking to someone on the public transit bus. It's like, no, you're a person. I don't talk to you.
Yeah.
You don't socialize, all right? Just type and call me a faggot. Don't, like, talk to me and, like, talk about, oh, hey, I made this mistake. I'm so sorry, guys. Like, dude, I don't care. Just don't talk.
I'm going to go ahead and say that is one advantage that... Well, okay, so I've used Steam's voice chat before, teaming up with people in H1Z1 or in other survival games, and yes, it is mediocre at best. And so bringing that into Dota 2, it's not going to be high-level quality. But the fact that it's available in the Call of Duty community and the Halo community, that voice chat was always very popular. Of course, you had your trolls and your 12-year-olds that sleep with your mom, but it's... It does give a grand advantage when your team is able to communicate very quickly, assuming, now this is a big assumption here, assuming that they're all willing to cooperate and work together.
If I had a team I wanted to communicate with, we'd be in Skype, and I'd probably still be yelling at you guys.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's the thing that happens.
That's the way it works.
Yeah, and that's how it worked when we did our Heroes of the Storm tournament. But hey, it comes out effective. So, moving on to Heroes of the Storm.
Yes,
that was the next game that we played. Obviously, the three of us play quite a bit of Heroes of the Storm. We've talked about that in past podcasts quite a bit. Now, why do we love this game? Kent, we'll start with you.
I think I like it a lot because it comes from Blizzard, and I love Blizzard games. I love their universes. I play all of them. I mean,
it's very familiar, yes.
It's very familiar, yes, and it's also much simpler. It has a much lower barrier to entry than the other MOBAs do. Because like you go in there, you don't have to learn all these items. You go in there, you're immediately gated, so you only have like 2 talent choices for each level. So you can get into it. You can kind of learn everything. And I just think, I don't know, it's built into the StarCraft system.
Now that game that you mentioned, where it limits your availability to those talents, which are essentially the best comparison is to items in a shop, since you don't really buy any items. Those talents is what differentiates your gameplay from playing a ability-based Nova versus an attack damage-based Nova. You know, so why is it that you think that gating is a good thing? Tell me more about that.
For new players, I would say, like players that have never played a MOBA or any type of game like that before, I think it's great because it's nice to have them be like gated, so they can be like, okay, I don't like that word gated.
I think what you're trying to say is
eased into.
Yeah, you know, it's a nice way of saying like, hey, there's all these options, there's all these really cool things you can do with this game, but we're gonna start you out like, you know, baby steps, you know, a little bit at a time.
That's exactly what it is. It's training wheels.
Yeah,
it's a really good example of training wheels. And yes, it's like annoying if you want to jump right into the thick of it, but eventually those training wheels come off. it has a like level up system. That League has a level up system for your account. Dota obviously does. I kind of saw it. Smite probably does too.
Yes.
Here's a New Earth. I don't think Here's a New Earth did, but I mean, it has a level up system to your account, and at level 25, you unlock all talents always. And there are 40 levels, so that's a little over halfway through. And I mean, at that point, you definitely are able to just pick up a champion, and you'll like have an idea of what talents will work with what you want to do. Those 25 levels will definitely get you there, no matter who you are. I guess if you quote me on that and I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But it is a good gate, or I mean, it's just a good easing in practice. You know, lubing up before the hard plunge.
I will say
it's very noob friendly, and I would say that I liked it a lot because it is that, and that was my first real MOBA that I really dived into. I dabbled in League beforehand, but never really got into it.
Not very effectively either.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, by the time I was about level 25 in League of Legends, I did have a pretty good grasp on the game's mechanics, how things worked. So I think that's a totally reasonable barrier to entry to take those trading wheels off.
Yeah, well, it's level 25 or level 4 or 5 on
level 4
on
with
the hero.
A champion. You have everything,
which is
unlocked.
like 3 games.
Yeah,
if you
it's
win
really
2
quick.
of them.
Yeah.
So if you buy a quick champion because you're like, you know what, I want to be Illidan because I want to be a demon hunter early.
Yeah.
And you play him and you get to level 4 and it's like, all right, I have all my talents, now I can level up this champion. I think I was level 10 on Illidan before I even hit rank 40, or not like rank 40, but level 40 on my account.
But so with what we're talking about is in Heroes of the Storm, there's 2 leveling systems. There's a level system for your account, and there's a level system per hero that you play. So on the per hero, you start a new hero if you're below the level 30. I think it's level 30 that you unlock your talents.
25.
This is 25? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wrong then. But before you get to level 25, you have to get to the level 4 on that hero to unlock their talents. And there's other like cosmetic unlocks and stuff at your level.
And yes, as far as gameplay goes, that is the only obstacle that you encounter is once you unlock all those talents, then you have the full access to that champion or to that hero.
Now there's one thing that I don't like about Heroes of the Storm, and that is their ranked play system. It is a new game. We've talked about this before. It's a new game. They're still testing the waters, but their ranked system is, in my opinion, it's still essentially in beta.
And
their ranked system is.
And same with even their unranked system. The matchmaking is really hit or miss with that as well. Or if you disagree with us.
I think that the matchmaking system is completely fine for non-ranked play. It works like any matchmaking system does.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with that though, like I agree with Irv, the non-ranked system is good. It's just the way that players perceive their matches. They're like, oh, this team had these champions or these heroes, and it was completely overpowered. And I'm just like,
that's true. That's one thing that's both a good
perception.
Both a good and a bad with the unranked plays. You don't see what your team is before you jump in.
Yeah.
With Heroes and Dota, you can look at your team and like, oh man, no one's going to play a jungler. Well, I'm not too bad at a jungler. I can go ahead and throw one on there. But you don't even have that option with Heroes. But on the other hand, your queues are typically a little bit faster. You're not waiting in line very often to play Heroes of the Storm because they just kind of throw teams together.
Yeah, and that's another thing about Heroes of the Storm is the matches are significantly quicker than any of the other games in their standard modes. You don't have to sit there all day, or not all day, but I mean, you sit there, you get in queue. It
took us like 25 minutes to get into a game in Dota, or
no, it took
minutes?
us like 10.
It took us. Yeah.
It took us a while.
It didn't take
5 or 6 minutes,
but
really.
Still, it's you can have these long queues, and then you have an hour, like a 45-minute game, and then that's an hour of time burned up, and that's like an awkward chunk of time. I mean, if you want to play a quick game, like a quick match, 20 minutes is great, and I mean it flies by in Heroes of the Storm, and yeah, it's great. It's also interesting because the maps have different objectives. Yes, I've heard they're just reskins of the same objective, collect the same, but they're not.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they occasionally have the same function of collect this item and turn them in, but they each work in little minute different ways, and then they also have different rewards. None of
the layout of the map, like
are the same.
If we were to compare Blackheart Bay to Tomb of the Spider Queen, which those are both collect coins, collect spider butts, and then turn them in. That's essentially, and it's very, very basic. It's the same objective, but the way the maps are designed, the way the coins appear, the way the spider butts appear, the turn-in points, the map layout itself, they're so intricately different that it's really hard to make a solid comparison.
I know, and if you go to other MOBAs and they get like an update to their map system or whatever, and they're like, oh hey, we updated our maps and it's going to be so much different, and then you go in there and you look at it and you're just like, they moved a couple of trees, and that's it.
Yeah,
like I can't eat the same tree in Dota anymore.
I remember when League changed around their jungle, and yes, they like added a new camp, they changed camps around, they moved some. They've done a lot of things with their jungle. And it's always interesting, but it's never that same, like it never changes the overall goal of the game. The goal of that game is always push down the throat, destroy their towers, kill their team, destroy their base. And that is the end game goal. Like that's one of the goals in Heroes. That's the one that gets you the win. But there are many ways to go about it in Heroes of the Storm. You can do it by controlling the objectives, and oftentimes controlling the objectives is beneficial. You don't always have to do the objectives. I've done it before. It's harder.
Yes,
but you can.
You've got to win team fights if you don't do objectives. In Heroes of the Storm.
It's just. I think it's just really unique, and it's a breath of fresh air to the MOBA market, and it is the youngest MOBA that we've played. And I sincerely enjoy it the most out of any of them, even though like it's probably in part to the fact that I was experiencing a lot of League of Legends burnout when I started playing it, and I still kind of am. Like I don't fully enjoy League anymore because I guess I'm resistant to change, unfortunately. But it's a really simple system. There's no items, so you don't have to worry about an item you used to use getting removed or changed. You just have your heroes, and heroes will get tweaked and added.
Yeah, they change talents pretty often, though.
The talents are no big deal. Those are pretty simple. It's.
I mean,
like,
you go in there and they remove one talent, but you still have 3 to choose from that are decent.
Viable.
I mean, it's not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, speaking of League of Legends, I think we've talked Heroes of the Storm to death, so we can move on to League of Legends, the one that I have the least experience with.
Yep. So Irv and I did a game. We did not do the typical 5v5 Dota style map. We did a 3v3 map on the Twisted Tree line, which is my favorite because it is typically a shorter game.
We had a 2-hour game once, though.
Not 2 hours. We've had over an hour.
Oh, it wasn't with you. I had a 2-hour game with.
I don't think I've done. I actually had a game yesterday. I was playing with Nick that we were on the 3v3 map, and it took us about an hour to finish that game, and we were ahead. But we got a little cocky. We tried to push too hard, and we ended up losing. The other team outplayed us. In the end.
We barely won against this attack speed Scion in 2 hours. It was terrible.
Oof.
Anyway, League of Legends.
Yes.
League of Legends,
Overview. Yeah. What makes League of Legends different from Dota 2? Let's start with that, because those are the two that came. They're the most popular. What is the difference between the two?
I'll start by saying that the differences are, for the most part, I would say flavor or preference based. At its core, Dota 2 and League of Legends are probably the most similar as far as the map, the gameplay goes. There are obviously, like, League doesn't have a hidden shop. There's no couriers. There's an automatic recall. The champions, you're going to see similar champions within every game between Smite, Heroes. They're all going to be built similarly to a degree.
There's a different business model as well, isn't there, between the two games?
Slightly, yes. In the end, League of Legends is skin-based. It's a free-to-play game, so they got to make their money off cosmetics. And much like Dota, to Dota's credit, you can't buy power in that game. Same with League of Legends. None of these MOBAs we played can you actually spend money to gain any sort of in-game advantage, which is a prerequisite for me to play any sort of free-to-play game. So that was really nice. But yeah, when it comes down to it, as similar as they are, it comes down to art style preference is a big one. The game engine, I feel, is a lot smoother in League of Legends. It's a lot easier to get a hold of it and get a feel for it, where Dota is so clunky and at times it felt unpredictable. It was hard for me to get into a rhythm, where in League I felt very comfortable.
I didn't notice when I was playing.
I never had random key bindings in League of Legends.
Yes, that was the thing.
Right.
That was always aggravating.
But I did notice in Dota that my key bindings, whenever I'd push a key, sometimes it wouldn't go off, and that kind of infuriated me a little bit.
It is frustrating.
But anyway, Irv, what, I don't know, like, what do you like about League of Legends?
Oh, this is tough because I've been on the outs with League, but
Right.
I guess
what made
it's
you
just-
want to play it before, like when you were really into it? What made you want to play?
I mean, the reason I played League is because my friend played League, and it was a competitive game. It is a competitive game. It is a fun competitive game. It was a great way to spend an evening. It's you play all night and you play multiple matches, and then you go out and you're like, dude, we did some crazy things in those matches, and there's some great moments that you can like do little tricks that make you feel skillful and awesome. And anytime you feel like you exhibited some prowess, it's a great feeling. It's like this surge of like, oh my god, I've seen a pro player do that, and I just did that same trick. Yes. And I mean, League has a lot of that. It is popular, it has a pro scene, so there's a lot of like emulation that can go on, and it was a fun experience. But then for me it kind of dried out because I played too much of it, and I got a little too deep into the rabbit hole, and then after stepping back for a bit, things had changed wildly, and it wasn't the same game. The meta had completely changed, which isn't like, that happens all the time, but items had completely changed, the jungle had changed, what like champion abilities had changed. There was just like too many things that were different, so I had to relearn the game, and relearning the game kind of like that might have ruined it for me, because it was just
it's frustrating after you're used to playing
I'm
to a
not
certain
at
skill
the
level.
I was anymore, except with like a few champions and a few case instances where it's just like, yeah, I can still do this flash that most people can't do. I can still, do this mad dunk spree on Darius, which I can't do anymore because they've changed Darius.
Well, you can. You just have to do it slightly differently than you could.
I
before.
haven't done it in a while, so but no, it's still complex. Like, it doesn't have the courier and that added macro, but it has so many things to it. There's these nuances when you're in lane of seeing them move this way and knowing that they're going to attack this creep, and you can plan that out. It's like fast-paced chess, and it's addicting and thrilling.
Yes.
And there's a lot of strategy involved, but that's also tiresome. Heroes it's less strategy. It's more like checkers. It is still fast-paced, and there's still some strategy, but it's not, I can only move diagonally with this guy. It's checkers. All the pieces move the same.
Yep.
So I really like League, and I will always have a special place for it, but it's just, I've moved on from it for a little while.
And I think that a point you hit on is universal to all MOBAs, is where it's like, we can get in there, we can do these awesome things in these shorter games and be like, oh hey, and go out later and be like, oh hey, did you see how I did that? That was amazing. That was awesome. I think that's something that all of these MOBA games have. But just like the different ones is more on, I think we've come to the consensus that's more just based on your preference of art style or like game types.
You spend 5 minutes in a MOBA, you'll learn very quickly whether it's the one for you. If you walk away from that game feeling like intrigued and excited, and whether you win or lost, if you're thinking like, man, I can't wait to go back in and I can't wait to get better, I can't wait to learn this champion better, I can't wait to try out, like, hey, I just got beat the crap beat out of me by this other guy, I'm gonna play that guy and see how it goes for me. Like, if you walk away with that feeling, that is definitely a game you should keep playing. But if you walk away feeling annoyed, if it didn't intrigue you, if it didn't pique your interest, if you felt like leaving halfway through, move on. There's so many good games out there. You can absolutely find one.
Don't stick with something if you like absolutely dislike it with a MOBA, because there are so many things out there.
Speaking of something that I really liked, Smite.
Yeah, Smite.
I love Smite. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, Kent loves Smite. For me, I played it, and it was enjoyable, but it's just like, it didn't have that click. It didn't have that like, this is the game for me feel. But obviously it might be for Kent. It's
Right.
an interesting one, and I like some of the stories interesting, because it's like, oh hey, these are like gods from mythology. I liked mythology a lot as a kid. I read a lot of it, so it's interesting to
of the
see
gods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I played Smite, and at first it was very difficult for me to grasp, being that third-person view, and with the skill shot, it's 100% skill shot based, which was very tricky for me to But once I kind of did a few games and kind of got the hang of it, it was a lot of fun. It was very easy. Once I kind of changed my mindset, that was the thing that was tricky for me. Was I was approaching it because I played all these MOBAs that were isometric, top-down view, constant clicking. Wherein Smite, obviously, you get a little bit different.
It's almost first-person shooter-esque the way that it works.
Exactly.
I mean, you're moving your camera around with your mouse and you're like clicking to like shoot the enemies or whatever. It's almost like that.
Now, Kent, how come this game really clicked with you?
Very disorienting, to be honest, and I honestly didn't think it worked that well. Just when I was playing Smite, I didn't like I liked the tactical view, whereas that one it's just like, oh, it's battle royale time, here we go.
Yeah.
Better start with my clicking and spamming. But I also didn't like the automated shop. I learned how to turn that off, but I didn't like people buying my things for me.
Right.
I'm an independent young black woman. I can buy my own things.
Exactly. So to answer your question, Cod, the reason that I like Smite a lot, what draws me to it, is I think it draws back to when I was trying to PvP in WoW. Like when we were playing it, Irv was like, "This is just like PvPing in WoW, except for I have to like keyboard turn all the time and stuff."
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost that same feeling of like super excitement where you're in the battle and you're just like on that view, like you're just in it, rather than the isometric view is more tactical, where you're just like, okay, I can see the whole battlefield, whereas in Smite, you can go in there and you can get like completely ambushed off the side and not even know it. And
that was the biggest obstacle for me, which I still haven't overcome because I'm not that good at Smite yet. But
there is a mini map, just so you know, there's a mini map.
There is a mini map, but I'm just bad.
I know, but I think the mode that I love, because there's different game types in Smite. The thing that I love about it is they have the arena in there, which is a 5v5 battle, and you go in there and it's just a big old arena, and you go in there and you just fight, and there's an objective, but it's just like so much fun. You just go in there, there's stuff going everywhere, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so disoriented all the time. I need to,
Well, the nice thing about that one is it's hard to get disoriented because it's a big circle. And the other thing I like about that game mode is if you just want to do team fights or skirmishes all the time, that's a great map for it. And by team fighting and skirmishing, if you're good at it and do it successfully, you can still help your team out. Wherein sometimes you get into MOBAs where some people just like to fight all the time. It's the equivalent of fighting on the road in Arathi Basin if you play in World of Warcraft. Just pointless, like not doing objectives, not helping your team, just boosting your EP. But in that game mode, you are actually helping your team.
Yeah, well, there's an objective, and like you can hinder your team if you're doing the wrong things. But I mean, in the overall, if you are winning those team fights and you are killing the other team, then you will generally win the battleground.
Yep.
But it's fun. I like it a lot.
So definitely tons of options. There's so many games we didn't play even. Heroes of New Earth is another pretty big one.
Heroes of New Earth is the exact same as Dota 2.
That's
no difference even amongst the champions. They might even have the same name in some cases.
The thing about it is, I think we talked about we talked about the two behemoths, which are League of Legends and Dota, and all the other like the newer ones and all the other, there are essentially copies of those. Whereas, and then we talked about the more different ones like Heroes of the Storm and Smite, which are trying something extremely different, but in the same kind of genre of, you're trying to push down a lane and kill creeps and
see that's another reason why I like Heroes of the Storm is and I'm a huge League fan. I still play it a game every other day or so. Because it didn't just want to copy a game. It wasn't like, hey, let's do Blizzard's Dota. We're not going to just reskin this game. We're actually going to put the Blizzard spin on it. We're going to make it into something that appeals to a different audience or to other people's needs, or the same audience but different aspects of it. They really took a very unique turn on the MOBAs scene. Yeah. I was a big fan.
So. But anyway, is that going to wrap it up for us?
Yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up.
I think that will be all, and so, folks, I hope you enjoyed the conversation on MOBAs. As you can see, there are plenty of games out there. You just need to find the one that is right for you. So all of you who are watching, please have a pleasant evening and go and beat some face.
Heck yeah.
In a MOBA. Have fun.
Yes.
Adios.